and welcome to a special Oyster Stew podcast series presented by Oyster Consulting and Morgan Lewis. This week's episode is part 2 of the series. If you'd like to learn more about how Oyster Consulting and Morgan Lewis can help your firm, visit our websites at oysterllc.com and morganlewis.com.
With the evolution of AI and the vast frontier facing the financial services industry, Oyster Consulting and Morgan Lewis have partnered to bring to light some of the critical challenges, threats, risks, and the opportunities that we're all thinking and talking about. We have set up this podcast series to share our unique perspectives on what we are seeing in the wealth management space from the legal, compliance, and regulatory perspectives, along with practical applications from trading, supervision, surveillance, risk management, vendor management, and operations and technology viewpoints. The team of experts joining me today are Carolyn Welshhans, a partner at Morgan Lewis in the Securities Enforcement and Litigation Group, where she advises and defends financial institutions, companies, and their executives in investigations by the SEC and other financial regulators. Prior to joining Morgan Lewis, Carolyn held a number of senior leadership roles at the SEC, including Associate Director of the Division of Enforcement and Acting Data Officer for the division. Dan Garrett, a Managing Director at Oyster Consulting with 30 years of wealth management experience, working at RIAs, broker-dealers, and clearing and custody firms, running operations and technology groups. At Oyster, Dan provides technology consulting and is leading our AI service offerings. Jeff Gearheart, also Managing Director at Oyster Consulting with 35-plus years of capital markets experience in senior leadership roles with institutional broker-dealers. At Oyster, Jeff leads the capital markets consulting services. And me, your host, Pete McAteer, a Managing Director with 25 years in financial services, in my 13th year with Oyster, leading many of Oyster's management consulting engagements that include firm strategic direction, platform strategy decisions, as well as execution with a focus on readiness and change management. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to dive into the topic of the pressures around leveraging AI and navigating the regulatory crosshairs. So it makes sense to start with Carolyn. So Carolyn, what are the current regulatory concerns regarding AI use in the financial services industry?
Sure, and thank you. And these are just some of the topics that that our team has been advising clients on and counseling clients on when it comes to the regulatory interest, particularly the SEC, with regard to AI. The first is disclosure to investors. That's where the SEC has already gone when it comes to AI. They're really focused on what are clients being told about how a firm is using AI, and does that match up to reality? The SEC has brought several cases in this space, including against investment advisors, where the SEC has alleged what they call AI washing, meaning that firms are saying they're using AI, and the SEC is alleging that they're not. And that they're using, kind of the buzzwords of this very hot topic to draw in clients and investors. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is market concerns. We haven't seen these cases yet, but we have seen cases in the past involving algorithmic trading. And so, with the newest iteration being firms starting to use AI, including potentially generative AI when it comes to their trading, if there is a market event, I would not be surprised to see a market event, if it's tied to AI, cases that are analogous to those algorithmic trading cases. So looking at, questions of market manipulation, but also looking at trading rules and regulations that don't require intent. So things such as the market access rule and how are trades being placed and what are the policies and procedures around those. The third main issue is cybersecurity and privacy. So what is the third-party risk and the use of client data? So for example, if a financial firm is outsourcing in any way, using another vendor and sharing client data. Is that implicating privacy concerns writ large, but also specifically under SEC rules and regulations that apply to financial firms such as Reg SID or Reg SP? And then finally, compliance and governance. So how are firms balancing the use of AI, such as in compliance or in trading, with ensuring that obligations, again, under the federal securities rules, are being met, and that there's the proper supervision being applied? So again, those are just some of the issues that come up when considering about or thinking about how firms are using AI when it comes to trading and other aspects of their business. And there's a lot of room here, I think, to make that technology work, but also still have an eye towards compliance.
Terrific. Thank you, Carolyn. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of talk about a couple different things there. That was great. We're seeing right now a lot of firms that are looking to improve their policies and procedures, particularly those that are just delving into using generative AI, examining policies and procedures, and they're looking for guidance around that. And so the regulators have been putting out some reports and so forth. SEC is maintaining that they're trying to release information rules that are not specific to AI, but very general. And a lot of the rules that are out there today apply. And Carolyn touched on, cyber security and your vendor risk and so forth. Those are all things that we do today with BCP and instant response policies, things like that, where we are having these relationships with third-party vendors, understanding what those vendors do, what the risk is, what data they have, how they're maintaining that data. And so it's very general and not specific to AI, but still applies. And to take it one step further, it's very important that firms understand what and how AI is being used at these vendors within these applications. And one of the big concerns is that there is so much work being done by these vendors right now. Everybody's trying to, promote AI within their applications. Some running the risk, as Carolyn said, of AI washing, but some of them are coming out with real great applications and features and so forth, which are in these point releases that just get released to a firm. So all of a sudden, you've been with the vendor for years, and all of a sudden they have a new AI feature. And the question is, did you go through the proper process of reviewing your policies and procedures to really contemplate all of that? Did you review your BCP instant response plans to make sure you understood how that technology is being used, how it impacts the provider, how it impacts the data that's being provided back to you? These are things that need to be considered at the vendor level, and you need to be aware of these kind of releases as they come up and keep track of those types of things, understand the impacts of those, document them, and include them in your policies and procedures.
That's some really, really good stuff there, Dan. It's really important to keep in mind your vendors' obligations and staying on top of your vendors throughout this whole process as AI evolves, what they're using AI for, and adding those things to your disclosures. That's going to get really complex over the next several years as this thing grows and builds and permeates the wealth management business. Jeff, anything to add from your perspectives?
Maybe just a small point of emphasis. I certainly think everything Carolyn and Dan said was spot on, but from a regulatory aspect, there are certain things, and what's jumping to mind is the market access rule that provides a lot of structure and requirements on market access and the use of AI tools and decisioning around that. And in our practice, we've seen firsthand where some of these things maybe weren't addressed or implemented correctly. So the existing regulatory framework really does have implications when you're implementing AI into your trading models or operational processes. So you can't fall asleep at the switch on those topics as well.
Great point, Jeff. Thank you. Dan, I'll let you lead off here. How can firms ensure their AI tools are transparent and auditable to meet these compliance and governance standards?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Pete. A lot of times these, AI systems, particularly the ones that are out there and for free, which no one should be using, are black boxes. You don't know you put information into them, it does something, it spits out information to you. There's no audit trail. There's no security with these platforms. It's very important that you're using, an enterprise secure generative AI model internal to your shop for two reasons. One is that, it's maintained and if configured properly, the data is your data. The data is not training the model. The data is not going outside of your enterprise version of that model. And two, any of the output of that model is your own intellectual property. So if you're using free versions, you're training the model, which has the risk of data getting out there. And two, anything that it's producing is not yours. It's that of the AI provider. The transparency and audit is very important. And a lot of firms are now a lot of AI providers are now starting to provide some of that transparency that wasn't in the earlier models. And it will actually show you the process or the logic of which the AI is going through to arrive at an answer that it provides you back. And I think probably over time, there'll be more maybe rules and regs around capturing that information, just so you understood how, what the model was doing. What was it looking at? What was it referring to? What data was it trained on previously to answer that question? The problem becomes that models, like we talked about earlier, change and adapt over time. And so as you ask them questions, the same question over time, you might get different answers. And so at any particular point in time when you're using a model and it gives you an answer, the question is, can you backtrack and understand how it arrived at that answer for you? There isn't a lot of rules and regs right now about capturing that and storing that may come. But I think it's very important that you're aware of that today. You understand that, and you have models that are, providing maybe some of those details. I think best efforts, and then as we're working with firms on policies and procedures, what you want to do is capture one, that you're using an AI model for some function. You're documenting, the date and time and what the prompt was, maybe what the output was. And if you have that trail of the logic, to keep and store that, and all of that stored within your books and records, it can be referred back to if there's a question or a concern when something goes wrong in the event of, hallucination or bad information that you didn't properly review, which is another important good practice. Is you always want AI to cite sources. You always want to review those sources. You always want to check those types of things and not just put out anything and everything that a generative AI model is providing you. It's up to you to review and audit those types of things, and the firm's policies and procedures should reflect that.
Wow, there's a lot there, Dan. Thank you for all of that. It's really important for firms to really understand the tools they're using, the risks around that, the governance and compliance around using these tools, and ensuring policies and procedures are updated to reflect that use and the controls that they have in place to manage this technology. Great stuff. Thank you. Carolyn, anything to add?
Yeah, I thought Dan raised a number of really excellent points, including the emphasis on the importance of the auditable and transparency aspects of your governance, but also what does that mean in practice? When we're talking about AI, we've moved well beyond capturing some emails. We're talking about really voluminous data, and exactly what data does need to be captured and potentially retained. Those are questions we've been talking to clients about, at our firm quite a bit. I think what it really comes back to is the fact that the SEC requirements when it comes to financial institutions, the policy and procedure requirements, for example, really rest on a reasonableness standard. So I think it's important to start with what is reasonable for your firm in terms of what are you doing, and are you being reasonable in how you are trying to govern and provide oversight and supervision of that. And then I think that comes back to, the points Dan, has raised about documentation. So are you keeping, those policies and procedures up to date, reflecting what you're doing, and then reasonably trying to capture and show the oversight that you have, and how is that occurring and on what basis and who's in charge of it. I think those are the really important points to show the supervision, to show the oversight, with the understanding of how the technology works in practice. And so that practically, we may not be in a situation where, it's an iteration, of a software rollout and therefore easier to capture. And so I think those are just sort of the practical and reasonable day-to-day discussions that need to be occurring. You need to be thinking about from a legal standpoint, as well as trying to marry up what actually works in reality and make sure that those things are thought through. I think the starting point of it being thought through at the time goes a long way towards showing reasonableness, and that, you've tried to address the risks that might be there specific to your business.
Thank you, Carolyn. A lot to think about here, isn't there? So finally, in this episode of talking about navigating the regulatory crosshairs and preparing your firm, what steps should trading desks and trading firms take to align AI implementations with regulatory expectations?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. I think a lot of good points have already been made regarding documentation and good policies and procedures that really govern a firm's use. So probably that's where I would like to start, is on the governance and accountability piece, making sure that the use of AI models, decision-making models, are consistent with the framework set up by the firm. And that framework really needs to start at the top of the house, approval policies set by the executive level, even approved by the board. And then when it moves down into the actual use within, whether it's trading operations or securities trading, to have clear governance, you need to have clear explainability of what the model's doing and making sure people understand it. That requires documentation. It requires acknowledging the decision logic. It also requires knowing who owns it. Increasingly, you're seeing a blending of technology and trading levels, technology and operations functions. Those roles have operated differently under different standards, but they're coming together. So it really takes a heightened degree of surveillance and oversight on all participants there. I also need to emphasize the decision-making is dependent on the data quality and where it's sourced, and making sure that it's appropriately sourced and not disclosing information it shouldn't. And then the key part from my direct experience is the control over regular testing, validation of the models, stress testing of the models. Is it doing what you expect it to do? Is it learning? Is it staying consistent with how the model was set up? Are you surveilling, looking for any potential trade decisions or security routing decisions that might be inconsistent with the rules and regs we all know we operate under, whether it's Reg NMS, Reg Show, customer protection rule, all those kind of things. You need to surveil for those types of activities. Again, keeping in mind that you're bringing a lot of non-security people, such as technologists, into the equation, who will find fast ways to do things very efficiently that maybe shouldn't be done.
I was saying some really good stuff there for a second. I got to go back and revisit it. For sure, human accountability is paramount with what we're seeing here and managing this technology, ensuring there's good, solid governance in place. Never assume general operation of this technology and these applications of this technology. It needs to be governed. It needs to be understood. It needs to be tested and controlled. And that's what the regulators are going to be looking for, right? is ensuring that that governance is in place, that oversight's in place, the testing and controls are there. All right, Carolyn, I'm going to ask you anything to add to what Jeff was talking about relative to trading and trading firms? It's kind of right up your alley.
Yeah, I had a lot of experience with that. I think that Jeff's point on surveillance is excellent. I think that firms are going to have their own business reasons, obviously, for making sure that any AI trading model is doing what they want it to do. You're going to have a business and a bottom line to be making sure that's what's happening. But I think part of that surveillance also has to be with an eye towards regulators. Also making sure for regulation reasons that your surveillance, again, I think is documented, what it is you're looking for and how you're doing it, I think is really important to have in place for those reasons. And then, as Jeff was talking, he was also making me think about training. So again, I think this is somewhat firm specific and specific to the use you're having of AI as to what that training should be and who it should cover. But I think training is a really important aspect of all of this, whether that's of the trading desk, whether it's of the people who are handling surveillance on the back end, and the topics, in terms of what you want people to be looking out for, whether it's trading that, is not doing what it's supposed to be, or you're getting really strange answers back from the AI model, whatever it might be. What are the things you think you want your employees to be looking out for, and what are they supposed to do if they see something? How are they supposed to escalate that or share it with others in the firm, and is that clear to them? I think those are also important things to keep in mind when firms are thinking about, navigating the regulatory crosshairs when it comes to the use of AI specifically, and especially when it comes to trading.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of our special AI series from Oyster Consulting and Morgan Lewis. We hope our conversation gave you new insights into how AI is shaping the future of financial services. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming episodes as we continue exploring the legal, compliance, and operational impacts of AI.